Hi, friends. Lucille and I hope that you're doing well during this very long and difficult COVID season. For me, January has been one of the fastest months of the year, even though it has 31 days in it. In any event, I want you to know that we're planning on having something for you in April and May in the worship center here at Grace Church. I'll have more to say about that as we get closer to those months, but for today, I want to welcome you back to this new series that I've begun called I Will Sing, stories behind some of the great hymns and songs of the faith. From what I've read, some song lyrics take a while before they come together. Sometimes the music doesn't come until much, much later. But there are some songs that seem to be written with little or no effort, as if they're being written by the Holy Spirit. That was the case for today's song called The Midnight Cry. It's a reference to Jesus' parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25. Well, during their teen years, Greg and Chuck Day had been hooked on drugs and alcohol. But in their early 20s, they became believers, just like many of us did. It was 1986 when they were visiting their parents' home in Georgia. And they attended their parents' church, which was beginning a new series of evangelistic messages. The guest preacher announced that his sermon that afternoon would be called, you guessed it, The Midnight Cry. When Chuck heard the title, he took out a piece of paper, wrote it down, then he leaned over to Greg and said, Greg, there's something about that title. And so they both listened intently as the guest speaker continued his sermon. In the afternoon, after lunch at their parents' home, the two brothers walked into the living room and sat down at the piano. That's when Chuck said, we could probably write a song about that sermon, about the midnight cry. Greg began to play a few chords on the piano, and all of a sudden he said, I hear the sound of a mighty rushing wind. And Chuck answered, and it's closer now than it's ever been. Then immediately Greg added, I can almost hear the trumpet as Gabriel sounds the call. Chuck came right back with, at the midnight cry, we'll be going home. It was line upon line. Greg would write a line and then Chuck would write a line. And that's exactly how the midnight cry was written, in a grand total of 30 minutes. Well, that night at the church service, Chuck and Greg asked permission to sing their song for the very first time. And since then, it's been sung around the world in many languages and was even used in the Left Behind movie. Friends, in Matthew 24, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, Lord, tell us, what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Jesus proceeded to give them and us a detailed description of the things we should be looking for, because he didn't want any of us to be caught unaware. And in that section, Jesus gives this warning. Therefore, keep watch, because you don't know the day your Lord will come. A few verses later, Jesus continues his warning in the parable of the 10 virgins who were waiting to accompany the bridegroom when he would come and take his bride away to the wedding banquet. But in the parable, the bridegroom delayed. He was a long time in coming. And so all 10 virgins became drowsy and eventually fell asleep. But at midnight, the cry rang out, the bridegroom has come. Come out to meet him. Fortunately, 5 of the virgins were ready with oil in their lamps for the journey to the wedding feast. Unfortunately, the remaining 5 weren't prepared, and they missed the banquet altogether. And Jesus ends by repeating his previous warning one more time. Therefore, keep watch, because you don't know the day nor the hour. Friends, it's true. We're the bride of Christ, and we don't know when Jesus, our bridegroom, will return for us. But since many of the prophecies and the signs of his coming have already been fulfilled, it does seem as though he could come at any moment, like he were at the door, causing all of us to say, maybe today could be the day. And so I chose this song, not only because the lyrics and the presentation are so powerful. I've chosen it because I don't want any of us, Lucille or I included, to grow drowsy, to fall asleep, and to be caught unaware as we wait for his appearing. It's much, much too easy to take our eyes off of Jesus and be consumed with the 3 P's in Pastor Jonathan's recent message: politics, the pandemic, and the problems we're going through. So friends, enjoy the message of the song, sing along with it, but most importantly, let's be ready, watching and waiting for the day when Jesus comes to take us home. After all, today could be the day.